In June 2015, select American delegates from the Center for Citizens Initiatives met in Moscow with Andrei Kortunov, the Director General of Russia's International Affairs Council. Council activities are aimed at strengthening peace and solidarity between peoples, preventing international conflicts, and crisis management. I had a few questions for him. What kind of misconceptions would you like to correct that have been propagated in the American media?
Well, for example, in my view, it would be wrong to assume that from the very outset, Putin had this master plan to somehow restore the Soviet Union and to undercut the United States and, to get to an authoritarian political regime. I don't think that it is right. I think that Putin was sincere when he called President Bush after 9/11, and when he offered, his assistance and cooperation. I think that the Putin's agenda was quite integrationist, and then it was overtaken by events. I also disagree with the idea that we all lived in a nice world where everybody followed rules of the game, United Nations resolutions and international law until Ukraine, and then suddenly, something went wrong, and the Ukraine crisis ruined the international system. I think it's not the case. We should dig a little bit deeper, and we should not forget about what happened in places like Yugoslavia or in Iraq. And again, I don't want to label the U.S. foreign policy, but let's face it, we all participated in this gradual erosion of the international legal system. Some contributed more, some less, but it's not the point. The point is that you cannot limit the problem to Ukraine, and you cannot limit the problem to just one man. The problem is much more fundamental, and it needs a more comprehensive approach. It does mean that I'm not critical. I am. I think that we on this side also made many mistakes. But we have to, what I dislike about the
That's what I'd like to hear. Yes,
what I
please.
dislike about the U.S. discussion on these issues. The discussion is focused on how to punish Russia and how to make life for Mr. Putin harder. I understand the emotions, but it's not the problem. The problem is how to solve, these issues that we have to confront right now. How to make our world safer, how to make international relations more stable, how to reconcile different visions, different interests. And this is the issue. We should think not about how to punish. Maybe someone has to be punished, but it's not the ultimate problem that we have to deal with.
Well, how can you possibly deal with a country who seems to be misrepresenting you?
Well, I think that it is definitely an issue, but again, this misrepresentation is a product of the current unfortunate trend of political relations. I recall, let me tell you, I was involved, marginally, but nevertheless, I was involved in the preparation of President Obama's trip to Moscow. And that was exactly, it was 2009. So that was 6 years ago. And I was in charge of the civil society part of his visit. We put together a large group of civil society institutions, I think, definitely dozens and dozens. We had a room of 300 people, and Obama came to our meeting and he made a speech, and he interacted with civil society organizations. And I can tell you that he was very, very popular in Moscow. People really liked He was so different. He was young and articulate, and also an African American. Can you imagine? It was such a different type of an American leader. So there was a lot of enthusiasm and sympathy, which suggests that people are not genetically anti-American. Likewise, I spent some time in your country and I travel there from time to time. I don't think that Americans are genetically anti-Russian. Maybe right now some would say, Russians, you have always been naughty. You have always been different. But I don't think that it is really something that will define Americans. So in my view, you mentioned misrepresentation. I think it is an issue, but I don't think that people in the streets, I don't know what impression you got here during this trip, but I don't think that they have, these xenophobic, hostile feelings in their blood. I think that people do have common sense. And if you get to this country, whatever they say about the US government policies, they still go to see, Hollywood blockbusters. They like to wear American jeans. They would like to listen to American music. There is a lot of, they have iPhones and iPads. There is a lot of American cultural influence in this country. So I would not overestimate the current rise of anti-Americanism in Russia. It exists. It is something that we have to deal with, but I don't think that it is really a kind of existential problem that cannot be resolved. So,
to what would you attribute it?
Well, I think that, of course, you can attribute it partially to the official propaganda, which is powerful, but you can attribute it to some American actions, which were a disappointment.
For example?
Well, for example, if you take a couple of American engagements in various parts of the world, which led to humanitarian disasters and to terrorism and to collapse of states. Also, I think the perception here is that the United States does not treat Russia fairly. For example, when they talk about Minsk agreements, whatever happens, whatever problem emerges there, Putin is to blame. I haven't heard any official criticism of Ukrainian authorities coming from Washington, D.C. They also have problems. These are not angels sitting in Kiev, but no one seems to notice that, which suggests that Americans are not necessarily objective in the judgments that they make.
Perhaps because they've been misinformed.
Well, probably because they were misinformed. I agree. That might be the conclusion. But again, I think that this is not something that cannot be resolved. It depends on our patience, commitment. It depends on our readiness to invest time and effort.
And that's why we're here in Russia, to find out the truth from you.
Well, I'm not the ultimate source of truth. I have my own opinion.
And that's what we're seeking, yes.
And my opinion is also biased in certain ways, of course, because I happen to live here. But nevertheless, I think that pluralism is important. I think some kind of humility on both sides is important. We should be ready to accept that we make mistakes, but that shouldn't prevent us from going on and trying to find the right answers to the questions that we have. Mm-hmm. So let's keep trying.
So many people discouraged me from coming to Russia because of misperceptions they had about it, and I'm amazed at how healthy people here look, how well dressed they are, how kind they are. I'm really impressed with Russia so far.
Well, thank you. Again, I don't want to generalize. This country has its own problems, and I think that these are not small problems. that this country faces.
But you've made remarkable progress in the past 2 decades.
Well, the country, and that's another, misperception that probably the United States should pay more attention to, that Russia is no longer the Soviet Union.
Right.
That whatever you say, because, when you watch U.S. movies and if you, follow Russian characters here, they came from 1960s or 1970s.
Right.
But we are different, we are getting westernized, we are getting, cosmopolitan. People here, they travel much more than they used to. The younger generation is fluent in English. Many of them got their education abroad, or at least got the education of Western standards. So the country is changing. Maybe it is not changing as fast as we would like it to change. Maybe the change is uneven, but it is changing, and we should have patience, and we should have some kind of understanding of this very radical, very profound transformation that the country and the people are going through. At least that would be my suggestion. I understand that Americans are impatient, and the Russians are also impatient, and the societies are impatient generally, but nations do not change overnight.
We have to find ways to get them to changing. The process started.
Without losing themselves. Don't forget about that.
And without misrepresenting.
And without misrepresenting. I think that. But again, it's so hard to talk about misrepresentation, because, as one American mentioned, Russia is such a country that no matter what you say about it, it would be true. If you look for something, you will find this something. You will find crimes here. You will find cruelty here. You would find anti-Americanism. And it will be true. It will be a part of the picture. But it is not likely to be the whole picture. And I think that if you have integrity, you should try to present the picture of integrity to the extent possible, because again, as I said, we are all opinionated and we are all biased in our own ways. So, if you're looking for something, you're likely to find it. If you're anti-American, it doesn't matter, where you go in the United States, you will find something that would allow you to keep thinking bad about the United States. So, let's try to be positive.
It's a wonderful place to end on.
Okay, thank you.
I was wondering if you could speak on what are your organization's plans for the future?
Well, we are working, we are kind of applied a policy research center. So we're trying to give recommendations on how to make the Russian foreign policy more efficient and how to promote the Russian policies towards globalization, and how to make sure that our relations with other nations are healthier and more profitable for both sides. That includes, of course, the United States, but we have projects with Chinese or Indians, Europeans. We handle issues of migrations and cooperation in the Arctic region. So it's a pretty broad agenda. We're trying to be helpful to the Russian leadership, but also to international institutions, to our partners abroad, to the extent possible.
I think you're a very tactful man. That's come through very loud and clear. And I think well-meaning people will see where your heart is, and they will appreciate that very much. So I'd like to thank you so much for this talk.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for keeping this country on your radar screen. We really appreciate that.
It definitely is. It's a wonderful country, and I will come back.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.